Everyone wants more money, but most of us weren't taught how to create an abundant life. That's where the More Money Show comes in. If you're ready to have more money, create more freedom, and experience more fun, turn the volume up. It's time to learn how to create the prosperity and life you have been dreaming of. Here's your host, Cassie Parks.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the More Money Show. I am your host, Cassie Parks, and today I am here with Kate Kretzinger from K8forwellness.com. Welcome, Kate. I'm so excited for this interview.
Hi, Cassie. I am too. A lot has happened since our last one.
It has, and it hasn't even been that long ago.
No, it hasn't been.
As you remember, Kate is an amazing wellness coach, and I'm going to start with what I always start with. Tell me something awesome.
Oh, something awesome. I have a lot of good, awesome things to share. But the two that come first and foremost to my front of my head is this weekend I get to have a mother-daughter weekend with my daughter, which I absolutely love. We're heading into Boston and we're going to go see the Aussie Pink Floyd concert. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, it kind of snuck up on me because we bought tickets back in May when we were talking about it. And I was going through my book and I was like, oh my gosh, that's this weekend. So I was really excited about that.
Yes.
And I got a $400 check in the mail today that I wasn't even expecting. So
yay, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
Well, that's a perfect segue. So give us an update on your total money manifested.
Yes, including that $400 I got today is $42,628.91.
Woohoo! And that is you've been in for like 6 months almost to the right now in the Enchanted Circle.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So I think you thought it was possible, but did you think the number would be this big when you joined the Enchanted Circle?
No, I did not. I didn't think it was going to be this big. Not at all. So it was awesome as I see it grow every 10,000, I celebrate it even more. I mean, obviously I celebrate everything that comes in, but when it's every 10,000 mark, it's like a big celebration.
Right? I know. We were like, I remember it was like at 38 or 39 and you posted your total and I was like, oh man, I'm like, yay, but also, okay, like looking forward to the $40,000 celebration. And as it always, I find this, you're not the only one. It's like, okay, yay, 40,000. And then all of a sudden it's like at 42. It went way past, like super fast.
It's super fast. It was within days, I think, is what it was.
Yes, which is
even
awesome.
A week. Yeah, it was awesome.
How does it feel to, like, you get to say, I mean, you are a money manifester, and you're a $40,000 plus money manifester. How does that feel?
Feels amazing. Like, I can't even put that into words. It's like an overall body feeling of excitement, if I can say it that way, if I were to put it into words. And it's fun because I love it because I even get excited about pennies.
Yes, right?
So even though, it is 42,600 plus, it's like, even when I find a penny, it's like, oh my God. And I love adding that to my total. So it's such a fun feeling. An amazing feeling to know that in just the 6 months, just under 6 months, that I was able to do that. So
that's awesome.
It is awesome.
And I want to bring this up, and this is as much for you as for our listeners for belief amping. Like, I'm a big fan of that. Like, when we know these things, I always say, tell the best story possible. And so I'm always looking for an even better version of the story, right? Because it's awesome to say I manifested $42,000. And what I also love is I looked up before we started. And so you actually, for a few months, maybe 4 months, have been investing in individual coaching with me.
Yes.
As well. So your total investment in the Enchanted Circle is $3,900. And that is over a 10 times return on your investment.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you told me that, I was like, yes.
Right? And so that, starts to build that expectation in your brain, like, oh, when I invest in myself, or when I invest and I do the work, or whatever it is, this, like, I get a return, right?
Yeah. And that feels good when you do that. Absolutely.
which is awesome.
It
I
is
love
awesome.
it.
I knew I was getting an investment in my return. I knew, but I just didn't realize it was, 10 times,
Yes,
which is
yes.
even awesomer. If that's a word,
It is
awesomer.
awesomer is totally a word. All versions of awesome are words. I love it. And so what are some of the other 10 times financial return, but what is the intangible return that you feel like 6 months? What's the biggest way you've grown in the last 6 months? Let me ask it like that.
What was the biggest? I'm sorry, I didn't hear
Way
that.
that you've grown in the last 6 months.
That's a good question.
If you can even put it into words.
I can put it into words. I don't know if I can do it for everybody to understand. So it's more, because we come here because we're trying to fix something. It's usually money, right? Because we're trying to grow a business, but it's definitely more than that. And I think we've talked about that before too. So I've done a lot of internal growth and healing and a lot of forgiveness of myself, because those are a lot of the blocks that we have that prevent us from moving forward. And so it's a lot of personal growth that I've gone through too. So it's not just, growing the business. And because to me, money is important because that's what we need for life, and we have to pay bills, and we have to do that stuff. And there's fun investments included in that.
Right.
But, it's really more than that. It's all about living life to its fullest. And to me, living life to its fullest is being able to love myself too. And so in the process of all that, it's learning how to love myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
I do too.
Yeah. So how does the last 6 months because you've been growing for a while and healing and doing all of your work, how does the last 6 months with a coach in a community, how has that been different than the 6 months prior to that?
It's huge difference because in the past, before, up until we started working together, I would do some healing, I do some growing. But as we all know, we fall back into our old patterns if we don't have someone there to help point it out and to say, that's not where you're headed. That's not what you have, your best interest in mind, because you know where we're heading. You know what our future self is because you've interviewed us, you've seen it, and you've spent time with them.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have someone on the outside, because our brain is wired to go back to those old habits because that's where it's comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have someone on the outside to say, no, you've already been there. Now we need to go forward. And so it's nice to have someone on the outside looking in, because it helps us remind us of that. And we're not in that space too long, and you keep us out of that. So it's nice to do that. When we do that, we grow forward even more, and we tend to leave that behind, the past and the stuff that we've healed behind, when we have someone to help us do that.
Love it. So
Yeah.
cool. So
you put a price on that,
right? I know. I always say it's priceless. Like
it is priceless.
There's not a number value you can put on that.
No, there isn't. There really isn't. And because it touches all aspects of our life, not just our business, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So speaking of business and money, you have, like we said, you've manifested over $42,000. And so now we've for a couple months now, I don't know if we've talked about it yet, but we've really moved into this stage where now it's about keeping it. It's about not just, it's like now you've seen your worthiness of like, I can bring that into my life. And now it's really saying, okay, how do I keep it, and how do I honor it, and how do I honor myself while it's here? So we started budgeting for attraction for you.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that. How does it feel to have that budget? How did the process feel?
It at first there was resistance.
It was resistance. Remember I just remember, like, you didn't even, the first time we did it, you didn't even have the right numbers.
No, actually, I think the first 2 times we did it, because we first talked about it, and it wasn't until we did put it in the spreadsheet the first time we talked about it. And you're right, I didn't have the right numbers. The second time we talked about it, I think it was a little bit more accurate, but it still wasn't accurate. And then the third time you're like, okay, wait a minute. No, we need the exact numbers. We need to do this. And then we sat down and we we made things, even other categories like miscellaneous and the food, because I found out I buy food. That's what it's not like I go out and buy clothes. It's not, it's not that. It was extra food, even though I already had food at the house. So putting all of that in front of me instead of at the end of the month, because what I would do is just collect all my receipts. I'd keep it in a folder. And then at the end of the month, I'd sit down, enter all my receipts, enter all my deposits, and then I'd do all my bills. And then whatever I didn't have left over, I would, ask my husband for money, or I'd have just enough. And so when in doing that, it was so eye-opening, because I saw actually spending for food, and how much I was spending on, gas wasn't actually, gas has gotten to, now that I'm more aware of it, it's gotten a lot better. So it helps me know, because we put it into a spreadsheet. So every time I get a receipt, I put it into the spreadsheet, and it's not necessarily my ledger, but I know if I'm coming up close to what I budgeted for food and what I budgeted for fun and what I budgeted for miscellaneous. And that feels good. Before, I had such resistance to it. And I think it kind of goes along with my story, my old story of survivor, right?
Yep.
And so it was like, oh, I got $300 from a client. I know I got an extra $300, so I'm just going to go and buy some food, or I'm going to go, and it was usually food. I'm going to treat myself to have some lunch. And it was already the same food that I already had at home. It's not like it was any different. So it's silly when I think about it. Like, I laugh about it. And then, so it's nice to have that visual now, because the first month I came in actually I went over in food a little bit, not a lot. And I was under in gas, and it still was extra, even though I went a little over in food and I was under in gas, it still was extra at the end of the month that I wasn't expecting to have, because I was more aware of where I was spending money.
Right.
It's funny how that works.
It is funny how that works.
Oh, it's too funny. And then, but it was a learning experience along the way, because there was I hadn't thought of to put in there. So we talked about that. We talked about future budgeting too, on how I want extra money for things investing in my business with you a little further, and things with, my truck that I want, because my truck is my baby, and looking forward to that stuff. And obviously new clothes for myself too, because I feel that my future self would have dressed differently, not a lot differently, but differently than what I do now. So wanting to step into her that way too. So we created a budget for that too, to start in December. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
So it's I can actually say I'm excited about it now. Whereas before, it's not that I wasn't excited about it. I guess it wasn't my favorite thing to do. So I don't want to say I wasn't excited, but it wasn't. But now it's like, okay, I know I have more than enough, so I'm excited to sit down and do this. So it has a different energy around it than before.
Right. So
before,
fun.
Yeah. Because before it was like, okay, so how much money am I going to have to ask for this time?
Right.
And it's funny, because I look back, one of the times I had to ask for a lot of help from David, my spouse, was I made enough. When I look at that month, I made enough to cover everything.
Right.
Had I followed my budget. This was before you and I made that budget.
Yeah.
So, a lot of that money had gone to other things. If I had really paid attention and entered my receipts, and I would have been like, okay, now I shouldn't spend anymore. I should have been more aware.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say, just because we just did this, that might have been one of your biggest months so far, is the month where you actually had to ask for help.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And so I want to talk for a little bit for our listeners, and just kind of point out a couple things in what you've just shared. Is Kate's former story is survival. And so when you're in survival mode, number one, and I've just become aware of this, I'm going to actually edit the book for this, because it's come up a couple of times in the last couple of days. People in survival don't do budgets. And the reason they don't, like, if you're a hot mess, you don't do a budget because it's always worked out. In survival, you don't do a budget because if you know the numbers, you can't be in survival anymore, right? As long as you don't know how much money you need to spend, just like this is the perfect example, right? You can have the best month ever and you'll get rid of all the money because you don't want to know. That's how you stay in that story. And it makes zero logical sense. It's so funny that your brain feels safer in survival mode than having extra money. And so you have to learn how to have extra money.
Yeah.
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 And it could have been huge savings, right? Had I,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
what was I doing?
Right. And that's what happens, right? You look back and you're like, oh, well, wait, like I did have enough. I love that you look back and just like told your brain, like, oh yeah, I had enough. I'm always able to take care of myself. And this is what I always say. It's not the dollar value. It's that story that plays out underneath. And so as we start to change that and grow that, the experience can change. And I heard you mention it, but I want to make it really clear to people listening, again, to amp up belief. You now are even, you have like, this month's expenses are paid. Like you had money last month that we're putting towards this month, and you already know there's some going towards the next month because of the way your clients and the way revenue comes in, right? You
Right.
already know that there's money for November. How does that feel?
Feels amazing. It feels amazing. Because I know that it's funny. It doesn't stress me out.
Yeah.
It never, money doesn't. And I don't know if there's something wrong with me because of that, but most people would be stressed out about that. I don't stress out about it. What stresses me out is stressing out my spouse for asking for money.
Right.
That's what stresses me out. So knowing that, kind of like, okay, now I really have to pay attention. And because I want to be self-sufficient too, so that's part of all of this too. And growing and healing is being more self-sufficient, and being more, what's more diligent about, taking care of my business and my investments for my business and in my investments for my personal life, so it's great to have you help me through that, because it was easy just to collect the receipts, put it in a folder. And then at the end of the month, it took me literally 2.5, 3 hours sitting down to do my books and writing my bills out. And, so no wonder why it wasn't fun at that point in time. Right. Now it is. Now I know. It's like, oh, I know I have more than enough.
Yeah.
I love sitting down.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that's the other thing is that when you, for lack of a better term, put it off till the end of the month, there's nothing you can do about it. It's already happened, right? But when you're keeping track of, because again, that's your food and that was survival, right? You even said, I had $300 new client, and that was extra, like September investments were already paid. And so you caught yourself in front of Whole Foods going, I have lunch with me. Right. I have lunch with me from Whole Foods. I'm not going in there. But the thought, you actually caught the thought, well, I have that $300 extra.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was the story I was telling myself. And I was like, whoa, I wonder how many other times I've done that, because now I'm more aware of it. Because and it was shortly after I read the book, Change Your Money Story, right? Yeah. And I found out it was Survivor for me. Mm-hmm. And so it makes me wonder how many more times that had happened, Yeah. I was like, oh, well, obviously it was a lot because of what happened beforehand when I had to ask for help. Yeah. So it's awesome to catch it myself in that moment. Like even today, I met a client at Whole Foods today, and I had my lunch with me. So what I said is like, I'm just getting a coffee and I'm getting a treat. And that's all I did. And I think I wanted to get more food, but I didn't because I had already brought it with me. Mm-hmm. So it was, I'm constantly thinking of that now, which is nice. Whereas before it was like, oh, I just got a new client that signed up. I can go get a snack. I can go get some food. Mm-hmm. Right. So the story's changed, which is great.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And then next level story, because then, and this is what happens. It happens every time I hone in back on my budget, because like I'm a hot mess. So that was my old story. And so as I grow, sometimes it'll get a little, and I got to come back to it. Right. But every time you come back to the numbers, what I find is that your expenses go down. Right.
Yeah.
So that happened with you. Your office rent just went down $250, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. The whole idea of even having an office full time now is awesome, because that's what my future self wanted, was a full-time office. And I've been asking for it for a year. And here it is, almost exactly a year later, I got one. So I'm so excited.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so now we just figured out the other day that the office space that I'm moving to is a little bit smaller than the one I am now. It's the next office over for me. So the lady that rents it goes to square footage.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm paying $100 more. I'm only there 3 days a week right now.
Yeah.
And I'm paying $100 more to be there full time.
Yay.
So I'm wicked excited about that. But then if I had stayed in the space that I'm in now,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been $250 more when I'm in.
Yes.
So I saved $250 a month for rent, which is really exciting.
That is really exciting. And what we did was I said, okay, now what does that, because money likes direction, right? Yeah. One of the reasons, especially if your former story was survival, because the way I describe it is it's like hot potato. If your former story was survival, when a bunch of money comes in, it's like hot potato, you want to get rid of it. And so the key is to give it a direction, right? Instead of just deflecting it in Kate's case, going and buying more food. You want to say, okay, what is that for? And so I asked you, what is that $250 going for? What's it going for?
It's going towards my house, a house.
Yay!
So super excited about that because we've been looking for a house for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be putting away towards a down payment for the house or for things for the house, like furnishing the house. So I'm really excited about that.
I love it. And that's how we change our story, right? Because now when you become somebody who can take care of themselves and invest in their house, that's a different version, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That girl automatically stops doing the let me go spend money at Whole Foods because she's investing money in where she lives, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love that you do that with us because you've always had us do that. So what are you going to spend? Because the first time you asked me that question, I was like, oh, that's really cool. You had asked me, I had extra dollars a month for saved on my gym membership because I had referred some people and you're like, well, what are you going to use that $30 for? And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. I never would have thought of it that way. So I was like, oh, and I can't remember what I said because that was so long ago, but that was really neat. And that was the first question you asked me when I told you that I was saving $250 a month. You're like, what are you going to use it for? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So I love that you do that with us because I think you're right. Now I know where all my money is being allotted to for my investments, for my personal and my business. And now you're asking me that. So now I know too. And it's like, oh yeah, now I can start saving for the house. And so it was great to have that reminder. Where are you going to put it?
Yeah, where are you going to put it? I love that. And what that does to our brains is like, it knows, like now your brain is like working in the background. Okay, we're putting $250 away, right?
Right.
We need to make that, right? You remember versus sometimes we go, oh, cool, I've got extra money. Like, and we don't decide what we're going to do with it. And then it just disappears.
Like food, right?
Yeah, like food, right? Like let me buy some more. That's like the best example ever because it's so interesting, right? And like you're right. So it's easier sometimes and because you're a nutrition coach, you're a health coach, like food seems like, well, of course, like good food, you should definitely invest in good food, but you're actually over investing in food because it was the same thing as me going to the store and buying $200 worth of clothes I don't need or not going to wear, don't love, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I used to do that too in the past. And I think that's how I justified that it was okay with the food because I used to do it with the clothes. And I was like, well, it's food, it's healthy, and I should be having that, right? And so I think that's how I justified doing that.
Yeah.
Was for that reason. Like you said, I am a health coach and I do nutrition. And so it just seems like it would be the right thing to do because that's my passion is food.
Yes.
So it makes sense.
It does. I love that you shared that because that is true. And often when we don't change the story, like you can change the behavior, but if you don't change the underlying story, nothing changes, right? Because like you even like could justify it even more like, oh, it's better because it's food and this is who I am, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny you said it because I think I can see the pattern now, like because now we're talking, but I did it with clothes at first and then I did it with educational material.
Oh, yeah.
I was buying books. And then I was like, oh, because I could justify that too. Because I was educating myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But a lot of it was stuff I already knew.
Right.
So like, how much was I educating myself more? Right. So
Right.
yeah,
It's the same
pretty
as the food, right? It's the same thing. Yeah.
same exact thing. Yep. Same
Yeah.
exact thing.
That's
That's
so
pretty
funny.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Like
know.
I learned something today.
I love that. Yay. That's why I love doing these, because they're so good for you guys and people listening. Like somebody's going, oh yeah, that never changed. It's the same thing. But every time we do it, because this is what our brain does. And you definitely said it to me when we're working on our budget. Like, it used to come out of your mouth more, but like, I want to invest in good food because that's what I believe in. And like all the reasons, right? Which I actually didn't have any problem with. It just naturally came out of your mouth, because when we start explaining, I think on some level we know it's not right, but we don't know why it's not right.
Exactly.
Right. And so we over explain, and you're like, yeah, because I need this food and I want to keep investing in this food, Yeah.
And that's something that David and I talked about a lot. We're like, well, we don't want to cut back on food. That's healthy stuff. And so that's why I thought it was really important. Because I buy my own food. I keep it separate for right now, just to see what's going on with the budget. And
I love that.
Yeah, so I keep it separate now so I can see. And the funny thing is I asked him yesterday, I was like, are you spending more or less money on food now that I'm not, eating that food? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, actually, he goes, I think I've spent more. So, because he goes to the grocery store almost every day, which is interesting.
That is interesting, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting to see that, because we were like, food is important for us. It's important for us and his kids too, right? Because we want them to eat healthy. Right. So we both had made that decision that, you know what, it's food. We're not going to cut corners here. And since that, you and I have been doing our budget.
Yes.
And I've been buying the food on my own. I'm spending more than, I think less than half, than what I was spending before. It is, because before I think it was around 800 and now I'm down to 400.
Yes.
And I don't feel any hungrier. And
I was just about to ask, and do you feel like you're sacrificing because, right?
No, which is kind of funny. But then, also I go to Hannaford instead of Whole Foods, because it's the same exact food, just not cost as much. So now I go there instead of Whole Foods to buy the food, and I save even more. So normally and I've compared prices to both places, and I get the same exact salad, the packaged salad, lettuce and stuff at Whole Foods than I do at Hannaford, and it's $2 cheaper. I'm like, oh, it's the same exact food. So why am I going there instead of here? And so I go to Hannaford now and get all the stuff that I need. And if they don't have anything there, the stuff that I exactly need, then I'll go to Whole Foods and pick it up there. So and they're not far from each other. They're just a block away. So I was like, oh, this is great. This is even better.
It is even better, right? I love budgeting for attraction.
It's awesome.
It is so awesome. Oh my goodness.
And because of that, I can take my daughter to the concert this weekend. We're getting a Airbnb and we're taking the train. We're going to have a nice dinner, and she wants to do some thrift shopping. She likes to thrift shop.
Yes. I love it.
I do too. It's not my thing, but my thing is to spend time with her, and I want to do what makes her happy, and that's what makes her happy. So we're going to go.
Oh my God. I love it. And I want to highlight this. It's actually, you get to be your future self. Like, this weekend is a future self weekend. And so because you've paid attention, you don't feel like you're deprived. You probably feel like you have more than enough now.
Absolutely.
And you get to invest in being your future self, which is only going to bring in more money.
Exactly. And my future self is taking my kids on vacations and doing the things they want to do.
I remember.
So, I know you remember. That's why you said. I just wanted to make sure everybody else knew that too. So that is my future. And actually last month I stepped into my future self with my son. Even though we didn't go away somewhere, I spent the whole day doing stuff with him. He got a new apartment. We bought some stuff for his apartment, so that is what my future self wants to do, is to be able to do those special things with my kids, and to be able to because I don't see them that often. So it'd be fun to give them the things, spoil them once in a while. They both work really hard, and
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to spoil them. So it was really nice to be able to do that with him. And I still had more than enough left over for my investments.
Yes.
Right. And then now
Yes.
this month I have more left over, so I can do this with my daughter and still and step into my future self. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh my gosh.
It means
I
a
love
lot.
it. It does mean a lot. And you
Yeah.
definitely have more, right? Because you've, so I want to talk about how you just, you've gotten 2 new clients in this month, or a little,
Yeah.
the end of last month, and at double your price, like you doubled your price, right? The
Yes.
investment to work with you, right?
Yes, I did.
And so this came up in a different conversation. I was like, oh my gosh, you didn't tell me, which I love. I love that you didn't tell me, because it means it was inspired. It means that your future self is coming, like you're able to trust and listen to your own whispers. So I get so excited. So talk about sort of the process. How was it inspired? And then what happened?
So I realized that my online group had become stagnant a little bit with people signing up.
Yep.
And so it was right around the holiday. I used Labor Day as a good time to just say, okay, here's a Labor Day. We'll take advantage of it now because this is the last day.
Yeah.
And so I got 2 people to sign up there.
Awesome.
And then a week later, and then 2 weeks after that, I had people sign up at the full price, at the double, because it was $150 to sign on. Now it's $300.
Yes.
And so they signed up, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And it felt good at the time. I didn't even have to question it. I didn't feel, because I know you and I talked about, we were going to give it 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
Is what we're going to do. And then we were going to raise the price. And that felt good at the time when we talked about it.
Yep.
And I love the fact that you said, you can change your mind the next day. Allow yourself to change it. And for me, when I woke up that day, I was like, I was writing up the special. I was saying, okay, I was going to say there's a couple spots left, but I was just like, no, last day, last day to get it. I had 150. And then, and then I raised it the very next day. And so like a week later, I got someone, and 2 weeks after that, I got another person. So it felt good. And I know that I'm worth that. Yeah. And I know that the time and the energy that I put into my clients and everything, and how available I am for them, that even like what we were talking about with you and me, you can't put a price on that stuff. Right. And especially where we're changing and healing people's lives, or dramatically changing them, just like you're dramatically changing ours. And you can't put a price on that. And so it felt amazing to do that. There was no question like, oh, should I not do it? I mean, it was like, do it. And, and it felt great. Yeah.
I love it. Have you, because we haven't talked about this, so I don't actually know the answer. Had you had like sort of that, because a lot of business owners, especially coaches, they have that like, oh man, what do I charge? And they try to get all this information from all these other people. Like, had you sort of gone through that where you tried to figure it out and it didn't feel good at different points in your business?
I did in the beginning. I did.
Yeah.
Very first, I want to say maybe a handful of people that I worked with.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't know. Because where I went to school, they put us through the whole business growing and marketing and all that. And they said, this is what you should charge to start with. And then when you get more experience, you can raise it as much as you want, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I felt that the price that they gave me to us to start, I was like, I don't know if I can charge that. I don't feel safe doing or confident doing that.
Yeah.
And, but I did. I went with what they said. And I think it was the first 5. And then after that, I was like, oh, I got this. Right. I've got this. And I started tweaking the program to my own. And I was like, oh yeah, I definitely need to start charging more. And the results that I was seeing from my clients, and things being healed, and things, major illnesses going away, and how much of a life impact that it had on them. I think it was probably 6 months in, I more than doubled my price at that point. I was like, okay, definitely, and I think that was the only time. It was like the first 5 people I questioned it. Mm-hmm. And after that, I was like, nah, no.
I love it.
Yeah, it felt good.
Good.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. I love it. And now it feels good to charge even more.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Because I know they're getting their money. You can't put a price on it. You really can't.
You can't. And what do you think, like, being the person who has a budget for attraction, who has more than enough, do you think that influenced that decision to be able to go, yeah, this is the end, and receive more money?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I think the more that I step into my future self and
Yep.
how you're helping me do that, it's going to be even easier and easier, and I don't think like, oh, I have to charge this because I don't have this money. I
Yeah.
don't think that way, which is a nice feeling, because in the beginning it was that way because I was trying to get out of my corporate job.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I have to charge this amount, but that doesn't feel good yet. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't cross my mind anymore, which is nice.
Yay. That is
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Cool. There's so many things I want to talk about, but let's talk about, I want to talk about, because we didn't mention this. So there was a moment, because I think this is important stories to share, right? So investing in ourselves is something we learn, right?
Mhm.
And then we learn to trust it. And so there was a moment, I don't know, maybe a month ago, and you're like, things are, I need the money that's for my individual session. I need that. So I'm going to cancel. And you didn't. And I just want to hear in your own words, like, what did that mean? And like, why, like, how did you make the decision to stay? And what was the outcome for you?
Yeah. So meaning, I'm just going to clarify that too,
Yeah,
because
perfect.
Cassie and I work together in the Enchanted Circle with a group of people as a group session. And then I also work with Cassie individually. And there was no way in hell, excuse my French, but I was going to get rid of the Enchanted Circle, definitely going to
Right.
stay there.
Yes.
I said, I'm not getting rid of that. But the extra investment of our individual session was being questioned, but it really tore me apart because I know that's what I need the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it was the best investment that I could make. And actually it made me really sad when that was the first thing when I was looking at it. I was like, oh my gosh, before we actually sat down, and no, it was after we did the budget. It was shortly after we had done the budget, right? No, it was before that. It was just before that.
It was right before that. Yep.
That's right. It was before that. So I sat down. I was like, oh my gosh, this is where the one place I'm going to have to cut. And it made me, I actually literally was sick over it. It didn't feel right. And, I had that knot in my stomach and the nauseous feeling. And I was like, I had mentioned it to you. And I even told you, I said, I know this is what I need the most, but this is what I'm going to have to give up. And I said to myself, even though I told you that, I said to myself, I was like, you know what? I'm putting the intention out there that I don't have to get rid of this because I know this is what I need the most.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I did my budget. It was actually that, I think a week after I'd said that. Or maybe it was that week, something, it was pretty close.
Yeah.
And when we did that, I was like, aha, I have the money for it, especially if I don't spend $100 on food.
Right.
So, and I knew that's what I needed the most. And so I am so thankful that we did that budget, because then I now still get to work with that one-on-one with you, because that is what I needed. And that's what I need to continue to grow and to step into my future self. I need that one-on-one time as well as the Enchanted Circle. I need them both. So, I'm thankful that I was still able to do that, and being more aware of my budget allowed me to be able to do that. So I'm so thankful that we had the money that month to invest in it so that we could get the budget. And now it's like, okay, I'm still here.
Yes, you're still
Not
here.
going anywhere.
I know. And you more than got double in new clients, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the cool part was that they paid up front. And so that helped it. That helped me to be able to have that cushion to be able to move forward, which was nice. Yeah. So it worked out.
Yeah. Thank you for being willing to share that, because it's one of the lessons I've learned. And I think when people can hear it from other people, like, it builds their own trust in, okay, because it's super scary to invest in yourself sometimes. Like, it's scary when it's the important stuff I've found. Right. And so, just hearing that has got to be helpful to someone else.
Absolutely. I know it will be.
Yes. So I want to tell this story because I know there's going to be so much more awesome to talk about next time. But, in this sort of process of like not knowing and feeling like there wasn't enough money, like you had kind of said, okay, I think I'm going to drive for Uber.
Yes.
And we kind of talked about it, and I said, okay, tell me why, because I wanted to flesh out, you're like, oh, it sounds fun. And but I think when we fleshed it out, it was like, is it really fun, or is this coming from this feeling that I need more money? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think because it was shortly after I figured out that I was in the survival story.
Yes.
It was shortly after that. And I wanted you to help me flush that out if it was that, because it felt really fun and it felt really exciting. So I was like, all right, am I really feeling the excitement, or am I trying to be the survivor kind of thing?
Yeah.
So you asked me to sit on it. And so I did. And then you said on it for a couple weeks and then see what happens. And the funny thing is, in those 2 weeks that I sat on it, Uber kept popping up everywhere. Like people in our circle, our enchanted circle, were doing Uber.
Yeah.
Friends that I knew were thinking about doing Uber. And I was like, okay, it just keeps popping up. And every time I heard it or somebody talked about it, I got really excited about it. And so after 2 weeks, I was like, okay, I'm going to sign up. And then I was told that I think it takes a couple weeks for our background checks to go through. It only took 2 days.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so I decided, I think it was the very next day, I decided to go do a ride. I had so much fun with the people that I went with. And I was like, okay, this definitely was inspired. It wasn't forced. And the 2 times that I did drive for Uber was awesome. I met a lot of awesome people, a lot of great experiences. I mean, my daughter was telling me I need to write a book about it because of the cool things. I mean, you can't make up the things that happened with me during those sessions. But you brought up a very good point last time we talked, is that because I stepped into that space, it opened up another opportunity for me with some products that I'm now selling and of CBD oil. So had I not if I was not in that space, of being in my future self and having that feeling, that abundant feeling, it would not have opened up. This rep for CBD fell in my lap. And that has been effortless too, since that happened.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so now I don't feel like, I still have the opportunity to do Uber if I want. And when it feels right, I will, but I haven't felt like I needed to go do it. But the CBD has been effortless. And I was like, okay, this is, the other opportunity that I have now. Just because I was in that space of feeling abundant and being in my future self. Yes. So it opened up this path for me, which was really cool.
I love it. And waiting, we're going to wrap up really quick, but I just want to make this point for those listening. It's that waiting. People always ask, how do you know if it's inspired action? And one of my best advices is just sit on it. Right. And then the excitement kept coming. Right. And then you could be in it and you could have so much fun making money. And it totally opened up this ease and flow with the CBD oil to just put it into your lap. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so cool to see it unfold.
It is. It's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love seeing this story. So we have to wrap up because Kate has a client. If you want to connect with Kate, you can go to K8 wellness.com. That's K8 for wellness.com. Thank you so much, Kate, for sharing your journey. Like, I know it's going to inspire so many people.
Oh, it is. And I'm so excited if I can help anybody out there. And thank you for having me. I love what you're doing. And this is amazing that you share these stories with everyone, because someone will relate to it and it will help somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, all of you listeners, have a fantastic rest of your day. Kate, thank you for being here. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you all on the next episode of More Money.
Thank you for joining us on the More Money Show. To learn how to attract more money into your life, go to your favorite book retailer and order Cassie's book, Manifest $10,000.